Hello and a warm welcome. You joined us on Market Cafe this Tuesday morning. I'm Ashesha Advaryu with me, Kanishka Sarkar, joining us from our Delhi studio. But the big story this morning, US President Donald Trump has escalated trade tensions with India, vowing to substantially raise tariffs. In a very Truth Social post, Trump accused India of profiting off Russian oil while ignoring the Ukraine war toll. This comes days after he slapped a 25% tariff, citing India's high duties and Russian deals. The latest salvo links trade penalties to India's ties with Moscow. Let's in fact go across first and listen in to what US President Donald Trump had to say on the sanctions against Russia.
Well, there'll be sanctions, but they seem to be pretty good at avoiding sanctions. You know, they're wily characters, and they're pretty good at avoiding sanctions. So we'll see what happens. But Steve is focused right now on the border in terms of, we're talking about with Gaza, getting people fed. And he may be going, I think next week, Wednesday or Thursday, may be going to Russia. They would like to see him. They've asked that he meet. So we'll see what happens.
Those are the latest comments coming from President Donald Trump. But India has hit back at criticism from the US and EU over Russian oil imports, calling it unjustified and unreasonable. Now, in a strongly worded statement, the MEA has said that India turned to Russian crude only after traditional suppliers were redirected to Europe, which was a move the US initially encouraged. Now, the statement points out that Western nations themselves continue to deep trade with Russia from LNG to uranium, making their criticism hypocritical. Now, my colleague Sumita Karir has been tracking all the developments very closely. Let's go across to her and understand what India's response really means. The most stern response coming from India so far, Sumita?
What India has pushed back against Donald Trump's threats to substantially raise tariffs on India over its continued oil imports from Russia, calling it the targeting of India as unjustified and unreasonable. In fact, India began importing from Russia due to diversion of traditional supplies to Europe is essentially what India also mentions in that statement. It also states that US actively encouraged that for global energy market stability. Now, in this strongly worded and sharply worded statement, the Ministry of External Affairs has defended India's energy strategy. It said that its crude oil purchases from Russia are a necessity that's compelled by global market conditions and are not a political endorsement of Moscow. Now, this response from India came hours after Donald Trump accused India of buying massive amounts of Russian oil and selling it in the open markets for big profit. He also vowed to penalize New Delhi by raising tariffs, which already stand at a 25% duty. Now, Trump's rhetoric, remember, has escalated over the past 1 week, especially when it comes to India's oil trade with Russia, perhaps as a ploy to put more pressure on New Delhi to agree to its terms and conditions with respect to a trade deal. Now, the NEA also pointed out United States and European Union's double standards. It mentions in the statement that the bilateral trade of the European Union reached 67.5 billion euros with Russia in 2024. The imports of LNG as well reached record highs, and US meanwhile continues to import from Russia the requirements for its nuclear industry, for chemicals, and for its EV industry.
Much for joining us with all those details. But Brigadier Vinod Datta, Kargil war veteran and former Deputy Assistant Chief IDS, speaks about Trump's policies with regard to India, and he also believes that India will continue to prioritize its own interests. Let's go across and listen into what he had to say.
Donald Trump has been giving statements which are not mature enough, and by no stretch of imagination they give any semblance to any statesmanship or a political leader of his stature. So India has also been following a policy of wait and watch. Though India has increased its intake of oil from USA, and USA substantially controls a lot of oil across the world. But India, by no stretch of imagination, will going to follow the mandate of USA. India is going to take a decision which is in the best interest of the nation. And India is also not going to, sever its relations with Russia. Because if you go back in history, you will find that America is not a very, dependable ally.
All right, so that's the latest expert view we are getting on US-India trade tensions. But moving on, let's also listen to what Prime Minister Narendra Modi had to say on the adverse impact from tensions in West Asia and Europe.
पश्चिम एशिया और यूरोप में चल रहे कॉन्फ्लिक्ट को लेकर हम दोनों ने चिंता व्यक्त की है। इनका नकारात्मक प्रभाव केवल उस क्षेत्र तक सीमित नहीं है। हम दोनों मानते हैं कि यह युद्ध का युग नहीं है।
All right, so that's the latest comments that we're tracking from Prime Minister Narendra Modi. But let's also shift focus and take a look at how the US markets fared overnight and the kind of handover we are getting for the Indian markets today. And it was a rather strong comeback session on Wall Street last night, with stocks rebounding from their Friday's sharp sell-off that they saw. Now, markets had slumped at the end of last week after fresh tariff announcements and a weaker than expected jobs report, which raised concerns about the health of the US economy. But Monday, that is yesterday, brought some relief. The S&P 500 jumped 1.5%, snapping a 4-day losing streak. In fact, more than 80% of the index constituents, they ended in the green. The Nasdaq composite, that surged nearly 2%, riding high on the gains in the tech stocks, whereas the Dow Jones Industrial Average, that rallied around 585 points, fully recovering its Friday losses. All eyes now turn to Tuesday, that is today's lineup. Key earnings are expected from Pfizer, Yum Brands and Fox before the market opens, that is the US market, followed by Snap, AMD and Rivian after the bell. On the macro front, investors will be watching trade deficit data and purchasing manager updates, which could offer some fresh insights into, the economy's momentum going forward. So that's how the US market setup is looking. But Ashesha, how is crude performing?
Yes, so US markets ended on a positive note yesterday, but when we talk about crude oil, we haven't seen much impact today morning, especially after the kind of move that we have seen last week. Today, after Donald Trump's comments on the trade between India and Russia, we have not seen major impact as far as oil market is concerned. In fact, it is down for the fourth consecutive session to trade near that $68.7 per barrel mark. Remember, Russia is a big player in the global oil market, and if India were to stop purchasing oil from Russia, then perhaps global oil prices could shoot up, but the market clearly is not penciling in that, and crude oil prices today are declining for the fourth straight session to trade near that $68.7 per barrel mark. Now, apart from that, as far as the yellow metal is concerned, that is gaining for the fourth straight day, and it is trading near $3,379 per ounce mark. Now remember, safe haven demand seems to be resuming, especially because Jerome Powell's succession planning is being considered, so that is raising concerns about safe haven demand now resuming in the global market. And traders are also optimistic about a rate cut in the month of September when Federal Reserve next meets. In fact, there is 98% probability of a rate cut in September, and that is also leading to the kind of move that we are seeing in the oil market, because remember, lower interest rates is always a positive for the yellow metal. But to understand how the global macro setup is looking like, and also to understand the latest commentary that has come in from India and Russia, we are now joined by Mr. Santosh Rao, Head of Research and Partner at Manhattan Venture Partners. Mr. Rao, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here on ET Now. And the situation seems to be taking an ugly U-turn, right? From accusing India of a dead economy to then, now that he's saying, Donald Trump is saying that he could substantially raise tariffs on India. Do you expect the situation and the dust to settle in the near term, or perhaps it is likely to continue at least for the next few days?
Yes, thank you for having me. I think tempers need to cool. At this point, things are not very favorable. President Trump is very, he can come through. I mean, you never know. He has a habit of backing off and do the shock and awe thing. But I think in this case, there is a narrative building here that India has been the bad guy here, profiting from cheap Russian oil and selling it to Europe and making a profit and all that stuff. So there's a narrative building that India is a bad player, a rogue player in this whole situation, in this war situation. So I think at this point, tempers need to cool down. Both parties are pretty much entrenched. I expect more negotiations. I think there's a American delegation coming to India later this month. So I think the talks are going on at a official level. But I think at some point, maybe Modi and Trump can meet, because we haven't seen that level of meetings yet at the executive level. So I think maybe that can cool tempers down. But at this point, 100% tariff or whatever he comes up with, that's not good. That's not good for the economy. But I don't think India is just going to give in and just say, okay, well, we'll take whatever you give. So I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth going on. It's not going to be settled in the near term. We haven't heard the last of it. So it's going to go on for at least a few more weeks, if not months.
All right, so it could go on for a few more weeks. Hi, Mr. Rao, this is Kanishka also joining in. Like you said, India is unlikely to give in, but August 7th, that's the day when, tariffs were expected to take effect. But what are your expectations there, given you said that negotiations are likely to continue and they should, go to more top levels, like perhaps Trump and Modi, they should be engaging in conversations for, getting a trade deal when it comes to these tariffs. So what's your expectation there, since the tariffs were expected to come into effect on August 7th?
Yeah, I think tariffs are going to come into effect on August 7th. I think India is at 25% on the reciprocal basis. Overall, an average of all the tariffs, of reciprocal tariffs that he's implementing, comes to around 15%, up from 3% that we had originally, US had on a global basis. So now up to 15%, and the market has pretty much absorbed that. So I think that's a big issue. But I don't know if he is tagging on the 100% on top of that right immediately or in a due process. So we don't know that. I haven't seen any language that said that things are going up from 25% to 100% as yet. But we still have 2-3 days to go, so he might ratchet it up. But at this point, looks like 25% is going to stay, and then let's wait and see. His post a few hours ago said that, hey, I am going to slam India with 100% because they're just not listening. They're just not coming along and just being very stubborn about everything. So I don't know. Let's wait and see. He's a tremendous negotiator, puts a lot of pressure, pushes you to the edge, and presses every button, and then kind of backs up a little bit. So I think let's see. That's been his style so far, and everyone has come to the table and has negotiated. Even the European Union has come up with a rate for themselves. So I think at some point he's expecting India to do that too, but it's not going to be that straightforward. We have a strong constituency, or India has a strong constituency to answer to, and they're legitimate ask by India in terms of the trade negotiations. Just reading the details. So I think a lot of talk needs to go on. Tempers need to cool, and just gonna back and forth, one-on-one talk should take place and will take place, because it's in the best interest of both countries.
All right, so tempers need to cool, and perhaps we could see some more negotiation over the next few days as the August 7th date approaches, and even after that. Mr. Rao, thank you so much for taking your time out and joining us here today and helping us understand what this means for the global market, especially when it comes to Donald Trump's comments on India. On that note, we need to slip into a very short break, but more news and updates will continue on the other side.
When the stakes are high.
Well, it's now time to take a look at how the F&O market is looking. Now, Pulkit is joining us to share how the F&O setup looks today. Pulkit, over to you. Good morning.
Good morning, Kanishka. So if we look towards the F&O setup, the India VIX value is almost on the same level, that is on the 11.97, while in the previous session it was around 11.98. So no need to worry about it. It's in the comfortable range. Now let's move towards the put-call ratio. For put-call ratio also for Nifty and Bank Nifty, for both it is around 0.83 and both are in the comfortable range. Let's move towards the change in open interest for index futures. So for Nifty it was around minus 2.33%, and the activity was around short covering. As we have seen in the last session, there was some up move, and that was due to the short covering itself. Now let's move towards the highest open interest for put. It is 23,000 20,500, and for call it is on the 25,000 strike price. Let's look at the Bank Nifty. For change in open interest index future, it is 5.6% and activity was long build up. For highest open interest for both put and call, it is on the 57,000 only. Let's move towards the FI long position. It is around 9%, and in the previous session it was around 8.6%. And for DI, it is around 66.83%, and in the previous session it was around 66.85%. In the FNO band, there is only one share, that is PNB Housing.
How the FNO setup is looking like for today's trade. Pulkit, thanks so much for joining us with all those details. But shifting focus then, benchmark indices break out of a two-day losing streak to end near day's highs in yesterday's trade. Nifty ended at about 24,700, while sensex ended over 400 points higher at 81,000 level. Let's go across to Snehi to get us all the market action that happened yesterday.
Well, yes, what turned out to be an absolutely lackluster start for our markets yesterday quickly changed its breath, and a one-way up move is what we've seen on the market after an initial dip in the market that we saw in the first 30 minutes yesterday itself. But after that, the markets have been cheerful, they've been resilient, and well, we've managed to close at the session highs of 24,722. Above the 24,700 mark, a much needed respite after the kind of consolidation we've seen recently. A 0.6% uptick coming in on Nifty, similar uptick about 0.5% coming in on Sensex as well. It was actually Nifty Bank that did not do anything at all and ended absolutely flat. So some of those banks and PSU banking counters were rather lackluster. But all the heavy lifting yesterday was done by Hero Moto, Tata Steel, BEL, Adani Ports, JSW Steel. On the flip side, some pressure on Power Grid, HDFC Bank, ONGC and Apollo Hospitals was also the reason why Nifty 50 was slightly under pressure in the first half. But that recovery in the second half was quite sustainable because we've managed to close in the green by a whole big amount. If we take a look at the broader end of the market, the Nifty mid-cap and small-cap space also about 1 to 1.5% uptick is what we've seen over there, so looking very resilient on that front. In terms of the sectoral moves, Nifty Metal was the biggest gaining sector yesterday, 2.5% uptick just on one day on an intraday basis, and even within that, the steel stocks like SAIL, Tata Steel, Jindal Steel, JSW Steel, all of them have done very well for themselves in yesterday's trade. This was followed by Realty, Auto, IT, Media, PSU Banks, Pharma, Energy and Nifty Bank. What ended slightly flat with a hint of a negative bias is the entire Nifty FMCG group of stocks. But if you take a look at individual action, if you take a look at AB Capital and how that stock ended, an uptick of 11% post very strong earnings. On the flip side, all capital market theme stocks, including ABB and Siemens, they took a nosedive after weak commentary coming in on ABB. So that was the market roundup. All eyes are going to be on if we are able to sustain those gains we've seen yesterday in today's trading session.
Indeed. So the big question is whether that gain that we saw yesterday is sustainable in trade today as well. But let's take a look at how Asian markets have opened this morning. And Japanese market, Nikkei 225, that one has started on a positive note. It is up nearly 0.5%, 0.5% as we speak, near that 40,504 mark. Korean market has also started on a positive note, up 1.5%. Hang Seng Index is flat as we speak. 24,773 is where it is currently trading. Shanghai Composite Index up 0.4%. So Asian markets have largely opened on a positive note, and ASX 200 is also indicating a positive start. That one is up over 1% as we speak. Meanwhile, Nifty implied open is indicating a tepid start for the Indian market on the back of the news that we got overnight on escalating geopolitical tensions, trading near that 24,757 mark, although Asian markets have opened in the green today. Kanishka.
That's right. So Asian markets have opened up in the green, following those positive global cues that is from the US market, but Indian markets are penciling in a lower start for this morning. But which are the stocks that we need to watch out for in today's trading session? To take us through that entire list, we are now joined by Srishti, Ravinder and Sharad. So Srishti, let's start with you. Which are the stocks on your list?
So firstly, the focus will be on a whole host of counters that are export-oriented and especially having exposure to the US markets, coming on the back of the commentary from Donald Trump, where he's actually threatening for higher tariffs on the Indian market for buying the Russian oil. As we know that that's the big comment that we are gathering this particular morning. But yes, we have the comments from India as well, when the official are stating that it is in the safeguard of the national interest, as well as a lot of these stocks, be it from the jewelry, textile, auto ancillary, and even the pharma names, will be the key to watch out for in today's trading session. Other than that, Tata Motors is the stock that will be in focus after the company has named Mr. P.B. Balaji as the first Indian CEO of Jaguar Land Rover. And yes, of course, we know that Mr. P.B. Balaji has been one of the key forces behind Tata Motors' JLR turnaround as well. He has been serving as the CFO position as well, and he's been responsible for the kind of turnaround we have already seen, taking Tata Motors up from that whole host of crisis with respect to the semiconductor, now the rare earth issue, and along with that the tariff uncertainty as well. He's been with the company for all throughout these times, and yes, he will be heading the Jaguar and the JLR division of the company now. Along with that, we also have a very positive announcement for IndusInd Bank as well, as the company has managed to get a top boss for itself, wherein the company has appointed Mr. Rajiv Anand as the managing director and CEO until August 2028. He was the ex-deputy MD and managing director at Axis Bank. And yes, of course, that's an ET Now news break that has got confirmed. Mr. Rajiv Anand will be heading IndusInd Bank.
IndusInd Bank and all those export-oriented sectors will be in focus. But apart from that, Rabinder, you tell us several other earnings. Well, those stocks will be in focus, isn't it?
Well, yes, DLF can be focused on the back of their quarterly earning, where company reported revenue at rupees 2,717 crore with an uptick of almost 100% year-on-year basis. And if we talk about net profit, then net profit also grew by more than 18% at rupees 763 crore. And if we talk about EBITDA margin, then company's EBITDA margin has company reported EBITDA margin at 13.4%. So overall, an inline set of number. Apart from this, keep an eye on Bosch, where companies reported a good set of number in Q1, and the company's revenue has grown by 11% year-on-year basis at rupees 4,789 crore. And if we talk about EBITDA margin, then EBITDA margin has also grown by more than 100 basis point year-on-year basis, and companies reported a net profit at 1,115 crore, which was up by more than two times year-on-year basis. And management said that the growth is driven by the higher demand in the off-highway and passenger car segment. Apart from this, keep an eye on telecom stocks like Bharti Airtel, Vodafone Idea, and Bharti Hexacom, where Department of Telecommunication has cut security test evaluation fees of up to rupees 95% and simplifies compliance process for the telecom sector. And this decision will reduce the financial strain on the telecom PDT manufacturers and INCL domestic players. And lastly, keep an eye on BEML, where company has bagged an order of rupees 282 crore from the Ministry of Defence for supply of HMB in a normal course of business. And BEML has also signed a MOU with Tutur the Hyperloop to jointly develop high-speed mobility and cargo transport solution, with Tutur as a design partner and BEML as a manufacturer partner. So keep an eye on BEML.
All right, so those are all the stocks that we will be keeping an eye out for. But Sharad, now coming to you, several earnings related counters in Paytm, that is also on your list. So what's the update here?
Stock is Paytm, and block deal likely to happen today in the counter itself. Alibaba Identity will be giving us selling out the entire stake out, or that's roughly 5.84% stake. The total value comes to roughly 3,800 crore rupees. Interestingly, the floor price is at 1,020 rupees per share, and analysts expect that this would open gates for more regulatory approvals when it comes to Paytm. Also up next, Aurobindo Pharma, mixed set of numbers coming in as the overall margins are still remaining under pressure. Revenue just jumped 4.5% on a year-on-year basis, while the EBITDA margins saw a dip of 66 basis points. Weaker set of numbers coming in for Kansai Nerolac as well. Margins are remaining under pressure, and of course this was a seasonally weak quarter for paint companies as well, as the benefit of fall in crude prices has not been actually factored in by the company. And over here also we see the margins falling by 143 basis points.
A whole host of stocks in focus based on earnings, and export-oriented sectors will also be in focus. Shrishti, Rabinder, Sharad, thanks so much for joining us with a list of all those stocks. But let's go across to Abhishek Gaushinde, our head of research for ET Now and ET Now today, Swadesh, to understand the big cues that we need to watch out for in today's trade. Abhishek, morning.
Good morning, Ashisha. So broadly, what we can see that yesterday market has ended on a positive note, largely supported by the short covering after a continuous negative decline for 5 weeks. Second thing is that the US market has ended also on the positive note yesterday. The thing is that in the US market, the probability for the rate cut in the September has been increasing, considering the kind of unemployment data came in the previous days. Third thing is that the Asian market has also opened on the positive note, although the gift nifties on the started with the positive, started with the negative. So considering this positive note, there are few negative things are also that FIs are continuously on the selling spree. Yesterday was the 11th sessions when FIs have been continuously selling in the in Indian market. Second is that this Trump's statement basically coming out regarding this tariff hike. So what I can decipher is that if there is a 25% kind of a tariff on the Indian market, in worst case it would have a 20 to 30 bips kind of impact on the Indian GDP. That has already been factored in. But the second statement which he has been added with this penalty kind of a thing, that has been making the street nervous, because ultimately if there is kind of a penalty or increase in the prices of this crude oil basket, in both the cases the inflationary pressure on the Indian market will increase, and that can't be estimated at this point of a time. So this will create a nervousness in the market. On the broader note, in past we have seen that whenever Nifty has ended continuously in a rate for 5 weeks, then in an upcoming or in a 6 weeks, Nifty has ended in the positive territory. So if history repeats itself in this time also, then we may see that we may end up this particular week on a positive note. We are hoping that some kind of a positive comments will come from the RBI governor tomorrow.
All eyes will also be on RBI MPC. But Abhishek, apart from that, any other stock that you're keeping on your radar today?
Yes, there are 2-3 stocks. First, I can say about the Tata Motors. So Srishti has already explained that Mr. PB Balaji is now going to be a CEO of JLR. So when Balaji has joined Tata Motors in 2017, the Tata Motor was in a very bad shape. We can say that CV business, PV business, even the JLR business, all those businesses were struggling. It was sitting on a huge debt, and then it has then the critical thing which Mr. PB Balaji did with the Tata Motor was that he has structured and then restructured the whole businesses in a smoothen way, in which now each and every business is independently generating profitability for the company. At that point of a time, I think its standalone business was generating a mid-single digit kind of a margin, but now it's a CV business is generating 10% plus kind of a margin, and domestic PV business turn around. Similarly, its the market share also went up to around 15% in the PV segment. It was, I think, 5-7% at that point of a time. So for Tata Motors per se, he has done certain structuring and restructuring which has completely changed the shape of the company. Even in the case of a JLR, he has seen multiple headwinds in the Chinese business, in the inventory side, COVID business and all these things. So he has sell out through all these things, and that has been helping Tata Motors now. So I think Street will take it positively, because currently also JLR is JLR is also facing demand challenges. Second is on the Bharti Airtel. So we are expecting almost 22% kind of increase, and it's going to report its result today, and we are expecting 22% kind of jump in its adjusted profit, largely driven by marginal improvement in the ARPUs and favorable contribution from the African business. Third is on the IndusInd Bank. So IndusInd Bank also appointed Mr. Rajiv Anand as its new CEO and MD. He's coming out from with good merit and a good record from the industry only. Earlier he was associated with this Axis Group. So he started with the Axis MF, and then currently he's a joint MD with the Axis Bank. So we are hoping that with his appointment, we may see a significant turnaround and the improvement in its, especially in the corporate governance side, and in the case of IndusInd Bank.
All right. Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you so much for explaining us all the factors that may impact the markets today, what to make of Trump's latest comments, and which are the stocks that you're keeping on your radar. But moving on, let's also bring in Snehi to tell us about all the cues that we need to watch out for today.
Well, yes, lots of news to watch out for in terms of macros, in terms of earnings. So let's get started. And if you take a look at the action expected back home, all eyes are going to be on the HSBC Composite and Services PMIs for the month of July. So this PMI figure is going to be crucial to watch out for. Globally, other than these PMI figures coming in from the US, Eurozone, China as well as Japan, from US you have the trade balance numbers coming in, from Eurozone you have the PPI figure coming in, of course other than the PMI, and from China you have the Composite and Services PMI both. And in terms of Japan, we'll have some more color on the most recent Bank of Japan, the central bank meeting, because we'll have the Bank of Japan minutes of the June meeting that will be out as well. Of course, you have the global composite as well as services PMIs too. In terms of global earnings, all eyes are going to be on SoftBank Corp, Saudi Aramco, AMD and BP. All of them will be coming out with their earnings. But if you talk about earnings action back home, from the Nifty 50 group of stocks, we have two companies coming out with their quarter 1 earnings. That's Adani Ports as well as Bharti Airtel. But even from the broader end of the market, a whole host of companies like Exide, Berger Paints, Gujarat Gas, Alembic Pharma, Lupin, Gokaldas, Prestige Estates, MTAR Tech, Torrent Power, and a whole host of companies will be coming out with their earnings. So keep a close eye on all of these stocks. In terms of AGMs, Alembic Pharma, and Hero Moto are going to be the two stocks that will be holding their AGMs. So these companies are going to be important to watch out for. Lastly, in terms of corporate action and board meetings, keep a close eye on Power Grid. The board is going to be meeting to mull fundraising. Also keep a very close eye on Viatec Wabag, Berger Paints, Trumbull Fertilizers and Ipca Labs will be trading ex-dividend. It's also going to be the last day to buy the shares of Ramco Cement in case you wish to be eligible for their dividend record date. So watch out for all of these stocks and all of these cues to track. All of them very important to watch out for.
Snehi, thanks so much for joining us. So, of course, all eyes will also be on RBI MPC, outcome of which will be out tomorrow. But on that note, we need to slip into a very short break. More news and updates will continue on the other side. Upbeat on margin stability and cost control measures going forward. Let's go across and listen in to what the management had to say.
I think what we've seen is a reduction in the intensity of price competition. I wouldn't like to necessarily take credit for us having driven sense into the market. I think it's the financial constraints that face companies which price irrationally in the first place. So obviously with the acquisition of Ecom Express, all of the contracts that we've negotiated with clients are at delivery pricing. Of course, clients get volume discounts for giving us larger volumes, but on deliveries terms. So the irrational pricing has been cleaned out, at least out of what was the erstwhile Ecom Express network. But I do believe that other 3PLs in this space have also signed contracts in the past which are below cost. And as I've mentioned, logistics costs inflate in a very predictable manner. So wages in logistics, for example, will typically inflate 7 to 8% a year. Rentals will inflate anywhere between 5 and 8% a year. And fleet costs also inflate at a fairly predictable rate. So the reality is that I think whether delivery does anything or not, balance sheet constraints will force independent 3PLs in this space.
All right, so that's the latest word coming from Deliveries management after its Q1 earnings. But moving on, Bharti Airtel has launched a cloud platform which can optimize up to 40% in cloud spends for Indian businesses. In an exclusive interaction with Bharti Airtel's the company's Vice Chairman and Managing Director Gopal Vittal talks about the star of the town, that is AI, and how the telecom company is keeping AI at its heart of the business. Let's listen into that slice of the exclusive conversation.
For us, this is the first time we are venturing into technology services and solutions. The combination of offering cloud for domestic enterprises and software platforms for global telcos outside the country, I think that makes it a compelling and exciting thing for us as an ambition. So I'm excited about the fact that Airtel will change over time as we embark on this journey.
Absolutely, and becoming a technology-first company, and of course adopting AI in several of your services. But sir, you did also mention about revenue. You did not really share the numbers, but when you look at this company growing in a future, this part of the business growing in future, what percentage of revenues is this going to be part of the overall business? Do you have a vision in mind as far as that is concerned?
Well, it's a bit premature for us to get into that because today is just the first step in this journey. I wish that in a year from now we have meaningful customers, we have sizable roster of customers, at which point we can sit down and say, okay, where do we want to take this over the next 5-10 years? The good news about the cloud is that it's a modular investment. You can keep making investments because we're already in the data center business, so keep making investments as the scale hits. And on the software, we have the product roadmaps for our own needs. And if you're taking it to other telcos, in any case, the product is going to get better and better every month.
Absolutely. Just one final question, since you talked about customers and, of course, there are many more deals in the pipeline. Could you throw some more light on that, on the kind of deals essentially that you're looking at this moment and, of course, over the next 1 year?
Well, domestically, we're talking to all of the segments that we look at, our banking and financial services customers, we're looking at technology services companies, we're looking at manufacturing and distribution. And of course, globally, we're talking to several telcos. I happen to be on the GSMA board. I'm the chairman of the GSMA board. So, by virtue of that, we have good networks and connections with customers around the world. And so we're definitely talking to them. And there is a lot of interest because they've seen the power of what we've been able to do within the country.
Just one final question, Gopal. This is essentially on AI-related efficiencies. How are you looking at, and how will those drive the business? What kind of efficiencies are you looking at AI in your business?
Well, we've had our fair share of experiments on AI, but now what we're doing is actually putting this at the heart of our business. So one is to differentiate our company, and this is where we're going after spam and fraud, privacy and all of these areas. And the second, of course, is putting it at the very heart of our technology strategy. So things like power saving on the radios, or things like, our platforms that we've announced today, putting AI at the very heart of those platforms to make that even more compelling.
That's the word coming in from the management of Bharti Airtel, but shifting focus to some national stories then. And India scripted a remarkable comeback in the final test match of the series against England at the Oval Stadium to draw the 5-match Test series by a draw. Mohammad Siraj and Prasidh Krishna shined with the ball to deny England a victory. India won by 6 runs, the barest of the margins in what would be remembered as one of the most thrilling test matches in recent years. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will address a BJP-led NDA parliamentary meet today. This is the first such since the monsoon session began, and remember that this meet comes ahead of filing nomination for the Vice President's election that is scheduled to happen on the 7th of August.
Karnataka's Transport Corporation employees decide to go on a strike today. The employees are demanding wage revisions and the payment of all due arrears. The strike is likely to disrupt bus services across the state. The Karnataka High Court had directed the unions to postpone their strike, but the unions have decided to go ahead with the protest. The European Union is hitting pause on its planned tariffs against the US, delaying countermeasures by 6 months to allow space for trade talks. The move follows a political deal between President Trump and EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen aimed at restoring stability. Trump had earlier imposed 15% tariffs on EU goods, claiming the bloc would boost US energy buys, though that pledge remains non-binding.
And Switzerland is scrambling to avoid a 39% US tariff on its exports, saying it is ready to present a more attractive offer to President Trump. The Swiss government is also seeking a deal before the August 7 deadline after being blindsided by the harsh duty. With key sectors like pharma, watches and machinery at risk, Bern hopes to avert damage without triggering a trade war. And the Kremlin has downplayed Trump's claim that he ordered US nuclear submarines to reposition, urging caution over nuclear rhetoric. While acknowledging US submarines are routinely on duty, Kremlin spokesperson said Moscow won't engage in public back and forth. Meanwhile, Trump's envoy may head to Russia this week for ceasefire talks, though Moscow remains tight-lipped on expectations.
On to some global earnings then. Palantir smashed expectations, topping $1 billion in quarterly revenue for the first time, riding the AI boom. The company's revenue surged 48%, earnings beat street estimates, and full-year guidance has been sharply raised. CEO Alex Scott says it's all about scaling revenue, not headcount, calling it a crazy, efficient revolution. Next up, American Eagle stock surged 23% after Trump praised its ad campaign featuring actress Sydney Sweeney, calling it the hottest ad out there. The campaign, while drawing criticism for being sexist, has sparked massive buzz. Search interest for the brand is at a 20-year high, but it's unclear if that will translate into sales, which are expected to dip 5% this quarter.
Tesla has awarded Elon Musk a new interim pay package worth nearly $29 billion in stock, 96 million shares that will vest over a period of 2 years if he stays on as the CEO or in a key executive role. But there's a catch over here. If Elon Musk wins his legal fight over the controversial $56 billion 2018 package, the new award then disappears. Tesla stock rose nearly 2% after this announcement. Fed's Mary Daly says the case for interest rate cuts is strengthening amid a softening job market and no signs of persistent tariff-driven inflation. While not committing to a September move, she says every meeting is live now, and she also signals that Fed may need more than 2 rate cuts this year if labor market weakness continues and inflation remains tame.
All right, so those are all the global stories that we're tracking this morning. But on that note, we'll take a very short break. Be right back with more news and updates coming up on the other side.
When the stakes are high and the answers are elusive, there's one voice unafraid to challenge the status quo.
At 8 p.m., I am not here to sugarcoat the truth. I am here to ask the hard questions. Because when others play it safe, I go straight to the heart of the matter.
Bank of India has given go-ahead for appointment of Rajiv Anand as MD and CEO of IndusInd Bank, and after that even IndusInd Bank board met late night on Monday, and an approval has been given for the same, subject to the approval of shareholders on the same. Remember, Rajiv Anand was one of the 3 names which was sent to Reserve Bank of India as MD and CEO of IndusInd Bank, and all this process started ever since there were problems in the derivatives accounting of IndusInd Bank, and the former MD and CEO of IndusInd Bank had resigned, and even after that a committee was formed for looking out for the next MD and CEO role, and we understand that Rajiv Anand was selected for the same. Remember, Rajiv Anand was currently Deputy MD in Axis Bank, and importantly he has taken an important position in Axis Bank regarding the digital banking portfolio. Although he was DMD in Axis Bank, he had also led the wholesale banking business and was also driving the overall digital banking agenda, and especially during the COVID times he had worked regarding the wholesale portfolio, the mid segment, where the bank actually led a huge growth during that time. So now Axis Bank's Deputy MD Rajiv Anand will be MD and CEO of IndusInd Bank, and he will be assuming the charge on or after 25th of August, and finally shareholders will have to approve this appointment.
Ankur, thanks so much for joining us with all those details. So IndusInd Bank in focus on the back of that, but all eyes will be on Reserve Bank of India MPC outcome, which is expected tomorrow, and nearly 77% of polled estimates do not expect a rate cut this time around. But remember, the odds of rate cut have risen by nearly 25% after US levied that duty last week. So the rate cut odds have clearly risen after the 25% levy that came in last week. Now remember, earlier 97% polled economists expected a rate cut, and now that has fallen to nearly 77%. So clearly there's some divergent view coming in on whether we could see a rate cut, but the probability of no rate cut is clearly higher this time around. Now, to put the things into perspective, repo rate currently stands at 5.5%, SDF rate at 5.25%, SLR and CLR at 18% and 14% respectively. So yes, all eyes will be on MPC meet outcome that is expected to come in tomorrow. But that's all the time we have on this edition of Market Cafe. Don't go anywhere. The market will take you through the next 3 hours.